Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman, and this is the Rusty Dwart. Rusty Dwart, #1 selling board in Rusty's lineup. Why is it the #1 selling board in Rusty's lineup? They tout it as the board to have if you just want to have one board, or if you're looking for a board that's going to cover 90% of the conditions all around the world. Check out the Dwart. That's the one that can do it. So let's get into the design on this board and then also the experiences that we had while surfing it. You look at the Dwart, it's all around moderate shaped hybrid design, and what you're basically looking at is the wider, thicker nose section of a fish blended together with a narrower, more performance tail out the back with a double wing going into a real moderate round tail. And so this board, surfing this board, for any of you that have ridden a wider, flatter nose board, great design for paddling, either to navigate lineups or to get into waves, and also if you've got a real soft takeoff, good for getting into that as well, and also great for getting across flatter sections in the wave. But a lot of times, if you have that really flat section, you then have to live with that flat section for the whole rest of the time that you're surfing the board, for the good or for the bad. So a lot of times, like, that bigger nose is going to be blended into also, or not blended into, a wide tail out the back. So you got full power all the time and no way to bleed your speed or to turn that board and go vertical with it. And that's really what makes the Dwart different from a lot of boards in that area. Because when you look at, if you were to look at these boards like without dimensions, this board looks pretty similar to, some people have made some comments, oh, that's like the Lost V3 Rounded, especially when you look at tails, like, oh yeah, it's got a double bump or double wing round tail. That looks like the Lost V3 Rounded. But this board is much wider in the nose than the Rounded, flatter in the nose than the Rounded, thicker throughout, and then also the tail itself is wider as well. So all of those things, when you hear the flatter, the thicker, the wider, all of those characteristics of the board or design elements of the board are going to make the board better for flatter face waves, for smaller waves, and just for generating speed. But having the ability to bump that width down, and with some tail rocker out the back, and bump the width down on the wings, definitely makes it a really versatile design. We've had a lot of sessions close to the shop actually with this board, and we got this one break here that just has this mysterious outside feathering peak that you always you want to get the roll in on this outside wave, and then you get a nice roll in, a bunch of good sections on it to bring it back around into the pocket, and then it just, once it gets to the inside, it just starts to fire. But on most boards you can't get into that section on the outside because you just don't have the paddle steam to get into it. And with this board, able to get those waves on the roll-in on the outside and get basically double the length of your ride by catching the wave outside there, and having the different parts of the board to work off of, having the nose width and flatness to get you in, I think is really helpful. And then being able to use that flat rockered, wider front of the board on the flatter part of the wave before it gets to the inside. When it gets to the inside, you want to have a board that you could pump rail to rail really fast and generate speed. And that's where this board feels different from the board that you took off on the same wave on. When you get to the inside section, you want a board that you can generate a lot of speed and can also go vertical in different turns, but also vertical for the end of the wave for that one last hit. And that's where bringing this width in to the back of the board, to the tail of the board, is going to help with that, both in these release points to bring the width in, but then also for these breaks in the outline curve to be able to turn off of for that one last little vertical twitch that you can't get if the rail was straight back here. So the Dwart, great board, super fun beach break board, good for points as well. The other place that we rode it was, I loaned it out actually to a good friend of mine who rode it backside at the Lighthouse, and the Lighthouse is a completely opposite wave. It's very rarely flat face. It's more like an inverted barrel wave, free fall. For him, it was backside too. He's backside free falling into these things. Pig dog, straight. You basically just go straight in the barrel off the takeoff. And For him, what Jack commented on was just the paddling speed. Like he got on the board immediately, he was just like screaming how good the thing paddled. But getting into the wave early and just setting up for the barrel rather than last minute dropping into it in a shortboard, he really liked. That wave inevitably goes from inside out hollow to a flat section to inside out hollow again to a flat section, and he was able to connect a lot of those sections that he wouldn't have been able to connect on a standard shortboard. So it shows the versatility of the design working in the water, like just as versatile as like the front of the board is from the front of the board is from the back of the board. With this board, we've ridden it, both as a standard tri-fin and then also as a quad. You see a lot of the rusty quads are kind of more tightly packed, with the quad fins being closer to the center line. So like a rail quad would be kind of more out here, where the rusties tend to be a little bit more centered towards the center of the board. It gives you a feel, it gives you the extra speed of the quad, but it retains a little bit more of that pivotal feel of the thruster. So if you're looking to add some more speed to this board in marginal surf, the quad's definitely going to help you if you like quad. If you don't like quad, if you're thruster only, like the guy that I loaned it to, Jack Graham, he's more thruster only guy. Grew up riding thrusters. He doesn't even want to hear about quad. He rode it as a standard thruster and was flying down the line on the thruster setup. So it'll work with you really either way. Looking at the deck of the board, you can see how much wider the board is here compared to if you're slammed all the way up on the tail pad against the back of the tail pad. How much difference the width is here to here, and what that's going to do is it's going to give you, when you need that extra push, you need that extra width to push against. If you're standing here, you're going to have a whole lot more tail to push on than if you're all the way back here. So it allows, like if you get a real milky flat section, just moving your foot a little bit further forward, still on the pad, but just bumping out to that next set of wings is going to give you a lot more board to push against in the turns. And then putting your foot all up against the ramp on the back of the tail pad is going to make the board a lot more pivotal in the turns, be able to go a lot more vertical in the turn, and then also to crack harder off the top of the wave. The board itself, the rails are pretty full on this board. You have the ability to rock that board back and forth, but also it does have a little bit more foam, especially in the front half of the board. From here forward, you're going to notice that the rails are pretty full, and that just gives you more push, more foam to push against in those softer conditions and to generate speed. So a lot of again, talking about that fish concept married to something more performance out the back, a lot of those fish are going to have a little bit wider nose with a little bit more full rail on it. So relatively flat deck, little bit of rail taper once you get to about here in the board, and then a pretty full rail, medium to full on the rail. Kind of real shallow, single to double concave the whole way through the board. Nothing radical on the bottom shape, but just a great all-around board. Like if you have one board that's going to cover it all for reality versus fantasy, the Dwart is definitely a board to check it out. So if you have any more questions about the Rusty Dwart, you can check it out on our website, realwatersports.com/surfing, or you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000. Thanks for tuning in.